Welcome to the Sci-Fi Sci, a podcast under the Believe Podcast Network about Black science fiction, fantasy, and staying on the same page in our marriage. Today for episode 35, we'll be reviewing episodes 4 through 6 of Yasuke, directed by LeSean Thomas, starring LaKeith Stanfield. So, we'll be spoiling the second half of the season, and last week on episode 34, we spoiled the first half of the season. Ben, how you doing today, baby love?
I got stuck in a deep, dark, whirling, beautiful, depressing pit of Thundercat's music.
Thundercat's music?
Mm-hmm.
Talk to me about who Thundercats is.
You've heard him.
Oh, that's who's one of the producers of the show.
He is the one singing in the intro, and also he is the bass. Apparently, his bass is thumping more than, or just as much as Kendrick Lamar's voice in "To Pimp a Butterfly." He was the bass player in that.
So when you say you got stuck in a deep, dark, depressive state, what does that even mean?
I was just listening to all of his music, and he's got some really depressing things, dealing with trauma and depression and losing friends that you love and things like that. So I was supposed to be making the outline for this podcast. Instead, I just listened to his music, which, by the way, before COVID, I was going to buy you tickets to go see him in concert for your birthday. It was March 15th of last year.
So were you going to try to convince me that this was the best music ever and then buy the tickets? Because
no.
I'll tell our listeners later that's typically what you do.
Yeah, no, I try to buy you a gift that's really a gift that I want to do, but I know that you would appreciate the experience.
Yeah, Ben will play a band all day in the house and be like, wouldn't it be like so weird if we went to go see this band? And I'll be like, yeah, that would be really cool. Like, where'd you find this band? Whatever. And then by the end of the day, he thinks that he's convinced me to go see this band, but really he's just a manipulative slut that he's already bought tickets to see the band.
Is it manipulation, or is it trying to feel out, and if you're not feeling it, I go invite somebody else to go?
Why don't you just say, hey, Amber, I'm going to play this band. I really kind of want to go see them. They're showing tonight at Talia Hall. What do you think? Play it. But you do this backwards way of like, you know what I want to hear? Some Thundercat. Oh, who is Thundercat, you ask? He's the bassist of the show that we're watching, Yasuke. And, wouldn't it be weird if he's in town with his band tonight? You do all that mustache twirling, and it was unnecessary.
Well, I like surprising you.
I guess the intention was there, but, the road to hell is paved with good intentions. Before we get started in reviewing... Woo, baby, where's the water? The second half of this season, I do want to read. We got another Apple Podcast review. Give me a sound effect.
Bloop.
Okay. We have another Apple Podcast review to read, so please, 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 y'all keep those coming. This one is from Jillian Elizabeth. It says, love, love, love. Amber and Ben are the best. I can watch and listen to them all day. I'm so happy I found them. I don't even know them, and I'm so proud of them. Is that weird? That's weird. But it's true. Which, a review doesn't really get any better than that. We love you too, Jillian Elizabeth. So thank you so much for that. It truly made our day. All right, Ben. Let's not waste any time. Why don't you talked a little bit about Thundercat. Why don't you talk about like Netflix anime as a whole?
Yeah, so Yasuke is part of a larger adult anime series that are coming out, and Castlevania Season 4 just dropped. Loved it. But people are still able to create anime during the pandemic. Awesome to creators it is so fucking great that creators are still making things in the pandemic, because the pandemic, because you're isolated, you're not able to meet up and get the juices flowing. I do wonder if creating things in a pandemic, affects the quality of it.
I found as an artist, it's been a lot easier to create during the pandemic because you're not worried about like getting to a specific place on time or... it's a little bit challenging because you probably have to work around somebody else's schedule, but I did most creating this past year because I didn't have to deal with the hustle and bustle of the city and things like that. Or I was panicked and I found inspiration through that.
I wonder if people who already work at home and then the pandemic hits, whether it was more difficult for them. Like for people who had jobs where they had to go to and then they come home, they're like, holy shit, I have all this time where people are already working at home. Now they just have another thing to distract them. I think like writers specifically. I listen to a lot of book podcasts, and writers are always saying like, oh, it was so hard to get anything done during the pandemic.
Because their families were home and everything.
Yeah. I wonder, I'm just curious. So whenever a creator like this, who has LeSean Thomas, who organized this entire shit during a pandemic, I mean, that's next level stuff.
Ben, you do a little bit of writing. Was it hard to adjust to me being home or around more?
I don't get shit done when you're around. I can't do anything
What
when
do you
you're
mean?
around. I have to go to a bar. I have to go to a coffee shop. I have to journal on a bus.
Why can't you get shit done when I'm around?
Because you are always trying to cuddle with me or just love on me and create videos with me. You're all up in my grill. And I'm not, even when the grill's not even on, I'm not making any burgers. You're on the grill.
You literally do the same thing. Like when I'm trying to do just like a quick voiceover or I'm trying to do my YouTube channel, like you're like, oh, I kind of do want to use the kitchen now.
Yeah, but I'm not actively trying to get into your space and interact with you. Like I will be working on a writing project, which I have one coming up soon. And you will like try to cuddle with me and jump in and be like, can we watch Legendary? Can we like hang out? Can we do things? I'm just like,
yeah.
I want to do all those things, but I also like to create and write. And the thing is, because of my day job, like I'm not a creator. That's not my job, or that's more of your job.
Yeah.
And so you're sort of in the creative headspace. So when I come back from an 8-hour day of work, I need to get right into it. And you're like, I've been creating for 8 hours all day. Come on, I need your help with this little project. And I'm like, I don't say this, but in my head, I'm like, I'm like, bitch, which, by the way, you call me bitch all the time. And I have to stop calling you bitch because people hear me do that because it's like an endearing term. But then one time we had a friend come over who we like both love. And I was like, bitch. And this friend like looked at me like I was the worst misogynist ever, which I'm not going to deny. Like misogyny is part of all cis men, part of men in general, I think, but I have to stop saying that. But in my head, I'm like, bitch, I'm trying to create.
It must be so motherfucking hard to have a loving, doting, smitten wife who is a creative. I mean, it sounds horrible for you that I want to kiss and cuddle you, not nag you while you're creating.
I love all that. It's just, I'm telling you that I can't get creative work done.
All right. Okay. I'm holding you to it now. When am I allowed to cuddle you? Because let me talk about my day right now. We both sort of work the 9-to-5 circuit. You come home, you want to read, write, and run. So what are my cuddle hours? Go.
I'm going to have to get back to you on that because it varies, right?
Exactly. And so I'm going to get my hugs in wherever. Anyway, I guess it was hard for Ben to create because I'm such a loving, compassionate, supportive partner. Why don't we talk about the show before I get hot with you all the whole time, bitch.
Episode 4, A Long Road. So we've got
a long road indeed.
No, episode 4 was fun. It was great. So we have ended this fucking terrible missionary, and our motley crew of mercenaries have gone off to do whatever the fuck they're gonna do, and now Yasuke and Saki have returned back to the village, and they're just hanging out. And it turns out, though, that Saki's mom was going to take her to not a doctor, but a trainer to essentially teach her skills. And so that's sort of where we're at here. However, the daimyo, which is the big bad of this season, which is like this spidery witch thing, we sort of get a really nice, clear image of this spidery witch person. I think their pronouns are she, her. And she sends out this sort of general called Kurosaka. And Kurosaka has to go find Saki because Saki has these godlike powers that the daimyo is going to use to, I guess, suck all the energy out. So, what did you think of this one? What did you think about this episode, The Long Road?
I think something that I've always been annoyed with about anime in general is that like there's like 50,000 villains. So I don't know. I knew that it wasn't going to be. I mean, obviously there are 6 episodes, so they had to tell some sort of story the second half of the season. But it's hard because as far as villains go, the priest for me felt like a more realistic badass villain, and so to see 3 episodes of him and then he's killed, and then here we meet a new villain who's got so many powers going on. It's like she has these insane powers in the universe. So what does she want with Saki? She wants more power with Saki, but she's claiming that she's more powerful than Saki. I don't know. I just wasn't invested in the second villain as I was with the priest, because he was like, I mean, we all know, like a creepy, over corrupt and powerful like televangelist. So for that reason, he felt sort of more hateable, and I missed him.
First of all, this is not really the first time the daimyo is introduced. You didn't catch the first minute of the first episode where the daimyo attacks Hano-ji Temple, leading the Dark Army, and defeats Nobunaga Oda, who was trying to, unite Japan. You didn't catch that the first 30 seconds, 1 minute of the first episode?
I mean, I just thought that was like a flashback from the past. I didn't know that the villain, like one villain was introduced, then a new, better villain was introduced, and then they brought back the old villain. Like, I can't, as someone who doesn't watch the genre as much, it's hard to keep up with, like, who's the enemy now? What you shaking your head
You
about?
watch TV like it's TV. That's your problem.
How am I supposed to watch it then?
You got to watch it like I'm reading a novel. You got to pull out some cliff notes. You got to watch it with a notebook.
I was taking notes, but I just was more like, we've all met 2 villains in lots of different genres, and sometimes you're like more invested in one villain than the other, and it's just sucky because the villain that we met in the beginning was a better villain. It just was. Who do you think was a better villain? The daimyo, the big bad, or the priest?
Abraham the priest was way villainous. All right, let's get into this travel part where Dr. Morosuke, who we also introduced for the first minute of the first episode. You remember him. You caught that, right?
I caught it because you were like, oh, we've seen him before.
Yep. So he and Yasuke are friends, and they know each other, and they fought together. And so Yasuke, after hearing about Morosuke, and that's where Saki was going to go, he decides to take Saki there. And he has this little piggy bank. I'm going to call it like a samurai piggy bank.
Yasuke. So Yasuke has a piggy bank. Okay.
But he's also referred to as Yasan. So there's like this
and
pepperedness of Japanese that permeates throughout the show. And it goes, a lot of it goes over our head, but some of it I'm like picking up on. But I forgot. But basically in Japan, there are these pottery containers where you like store things, and the only way to get them out is you have to break it. Sort of like a piggy bank,
I like that. Okay.
Yeah, and so he breaks it open. Now he's walking around with his samurai sword now. Because before we didn't really see him with his sword. And so now he's, after going into retirement for a while, now he is rocking the sword again. And that's when he fights Kurosaka, who's another villain, who's a general who's been empowered by the daimyo. And there's a really great fight scene with lots of splurting blood.
This is a bloody season. So I remember you saying when that person came on that was that samurai that never accepted him, correct?
Oh, no, that's a different villain. That's the Dark General in episode 5, which we can get to. But basically in episode 4, I like this one because Amber's like, oh my God, there was so much. But I like this one because Yasuke and Saki sort of travel together. They're developing relationship. They have their really cool fight scene that they build off of each other, and there's a great like slasher, like sword throw. So that was fun. And episode 4 is they make it to Morosuke, who's going to train Saki in her blue magical powers. I'm going to call it blue magical powers.
I like that. I would say that episode 4 was the beginning of the end, because we got a really great first half of the story with episodes 1, 2, 3. Then the long road was episode 4, and the long road became like, okay, they're starting sort of a new something. It felt a little disjointed from the first part. It's But then it just slowly took a turn. Go ahead, talk about the turn it took, Ben.
Yeah, so episode 5 and 6 basically is episode 5 is Pain and Blood, episode 6 is Balance. It's just a great big fight scene between the daimyo and Yasuke and Saki and Morisuke. And then for whatever reason, Saki sort of calls back the mercenaries in episode 5.
Yeah, you remember the people that wanted to kill us 3 episodes ago? They're back and on our side now. What?
Well, because they're true neutral, right? They go whoever pays them. So they come back, they fight, but then all of them meet really terrible deaths. All of them meet really terrible deaths.
And desks, because they have to take a test.
Yeah.
It's SAT. It's Saturday.
Except for Achoja, I guess, at the end, Achoja. But of course, I hate this stuff when I know... I hate to compare this to the other anime Netflix show, Castlevania. But in that, which I'm watching, there are whole sequences where characters are just talking with each other and debating like philosophical arguments. Some of the most beautiful dialogue ever. And we get a little bit of that in the first 3, a little bit of the 4th episode. But 5 and 6, just action. I was like, oh, come on.
It reminded me of... So this is completely different universe of shows, but in one of the last seasons of Orange is the New Black, there was a prison riot, right? And I initially thought, and we love Orange is the New Black because Orange is the New Black was one of the first shows we were kind of able to binge, like full season on Netflix, like go for it. So we knew those characters really well, but the last season of Orange is the New Black, for me, there was a prison riot, which I thought was going to last maybe 1 or 2 episodes, and it ended up being the whole effing season. I get it. Prison riots are multiple days and weeks and times, but you felt that lag, and after a while, you're like, I don't care about the action of the fight sequence anymore. And so for episodes 5 and 6 to be like pure fighting and pure war, when you're sort of still unaware of who each characters are and what their backstory is, it just felt a little lazy to me. And inversely, Cannon Busters didn't feel that way. There were times where we had emotional moments with I vividly remember, even though we saw this like multiple months ago, that scene with Casey being worn versus obsolete. Like so we know LeSean Thomas can do emotional, we know he can do plot development and character story arc, and we just didn't see that here. Like Yasuke was essentially just like, what were the major differences between Yasuke and Haruto, the robot that just fights? Like we got to see glimpses of Yasuke's background when he was unconscious, but when he was alive and well, he was never really, we never got to see that. I would have thought if this whole series was about him, we would have seen his journey from a youth, or maybe in one part of his life he lost a loved one, like someone he really loved, not just someone he killed and trusted, or whatever happened to his mother. I don't know. I just wanted to see a little bit more richness of his character development, and then maybe I would have been more invested in the fight sequence. But it's hard to stay invested when you see people fighting and you don't know who they are.
So I think a little bit has to do with trusting the writers and trusting that they have plans for him. So essentially, obviously, the daimyo is destroyed at the end of, and her power is taken away. Yasuke chooses not to kill her, decides to give her over to the people she was oppressing. They cast their judgment. We don't know what that judgment is. Yasuke walks into the sunrise, and there's sort of a promise, endless adventures. So they do plan for more seasons. And so I'm going to trust the writers on this one, because in Castlevania season 3, at the end of it, they ended it really wonky, and I didn't like it. But then they did things in season 4 that sort of addressed the ledges that sort of left me like, oh, like, where are you going with this? So I think part of it has to do with trusting the writing process. I did like one part in I think episode 5, where we find out the Dark General, who I knew exactly who that was from the beginning. The Dark General is this person with all this power, one of the daimyo's puppets, but it's Mitsuhide, who was the original old samurai from season 1, 2, 3 who told Yasuke that he would never be a true samurai because he was black. And I like this. There's this moment where...
You like that, man?
Yeah, well...
Damn.
Well, there's this moment because Mitsuhide is an asshole to begin with, but he's now, as the Dark General, he's empowered with the daimyo's powers. And at one point, when Saki has sort of taken away the daimyo's powers, Mitsuhide loses those powers, and he's still like, fuck you. Like, he didn't need powers, evil powers, to be an evil person. He was still awful. And then Yasuke, kills him.
One part of episode 5 that was just pure embarrassing. And I promise you this happens. Please just go. If you're not even watching the show, if you're just watching this listening to this to hear us shoot the shit, I totally understand. But there is a part in episode 5, I shit you not, where one of the characters says, "I believe the children are our future," which is literally just a lyric from a Whitney Houston song. I'm sure they were not trying to do that, or maybe he was trying to do it just as a funny. But I think I remember like busting out laughing. I was like, not Whitney Houston. What?
I mean, that's a very common phrase that people use. It's cliche. It's lazy writing.
It's lazy. You can't say, "I believe the children are our future" in a show and not expect people to erupt in laughter. Like that just checked it out for me. I was like, "Are you come on? What's next?" And my heart will go on. Like that can't happen.
I want to go back to the Dark General because I think it tagged into something that you bring up a lot when we talk about horror or supernatural, and the fact that people don't have to be possessed to be terrible humans, right? And this is something I think about a lot because growing up, I was often taught that to do something extraordinarily bad, you were being controlled by the devil.
Yeah, or if anything bad even happens, it's like, "Ooh, the devil is out here. I just got a parking ticket. The devil is busy. Yeah. I just got coronavirus 19. The devil is out here." And it's like, you went to that party maskless.
Right. Well, and that's sort of what Mitsuhide's character is. It's like he's controlled by dark, evil power. He loses that power or it's cut off from him, and he's still this awful, prejudiced, racist person. I think because of our understanding of race, I don't know if that would fit his description, the way he was treating Yasuke in the context of, 16th century, late 16th century Japan, but definitely prejudice and definitely just awful. So I don't know. I mean, let's go ahead and
who do you think was worse, Mitsuhide or the priest?
I mean, I think they were both good villains. I mean, the daimyo was just boring. Like,
right.
I would have much rather had the Dark General as the big bad, and sort of that confrontation.
I agree. Like when people are like racist, even on their deathbed, and not like when people are realizing I'm about to die and I still need to tell a black person that they'll always be a servant, like. That enraged me so much to the point where I'm like, this is who should be the big bad. Like this, I mean, because someone wanting more power is like just Agatha all along. Like that's not, like, I just, like that person's cool. They want more power. But the people who look at a black person who is literally killing them successfully and says like, and you still ain't shit. Like, are you fucking kidding me? Yeah. Bitch, your organs is hanging out because of me.
That was a great scene.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Well, let's talk about the last scene of episode 6, Balance, which I really wish they went in this direction. But essentially, in the first 2 episodes, we're introduced to Natsumaru, who was the only woman samurai that Naga had welcomed into his clan, right? And so, however, she decided to stay and be loyal to her original clan and betrays Naga. And in that betrayal, Yasuke ends up killing Natsumaru. So at the end of season 6, Yasuke goes to Natsumaru's brother and returns her sword to him. Yeah, you have to watch till the end of the credits. And I was like, oh, that is where you should have gone. Because Natsumaru's brother was actually saved at one point I think maybe in the second episode by Yasuke, and it would have been interesting to see how Natsumaro's brother sort of accepted Yasuke or rejected Yasuke, or sort of dealt with, this gray area of like, you killed my sister, but at the same time you returned her sword, and the reason you killed her is because you were loyal to the person who raised you up. However, in this situation, Natsumaro was originally loyal to her old clan because, as we know, Nobunaga, like, he wasn't always the best type of leader. Like, when he took over castles that would not join his clan and unifying Japan, he killed everybody in there, right? So there was this so much gray, and they missed so much. I was so frustrated because I wish that the rest of the season would have dealt with that dynamic. I don't know.
I find like loyalty to a throne or a dynasty so fascinating to me. I remember when we went to go see Black Panther, and I remember for the first time, and I remember being so mad at the Dora Milaje for like sort of siding with Killmonger at one point. I was like, what is going on? Like, you just so easily forgot about Black Panther and just like took the side of this person, and you at the moment were explaining to me like, that's how this shit works. Like, they are loyal to Wakanda no matter who's in charge, which is so counter to, how we are in America. It's like, I'm loyal to, like, if Obama's in office, I'm loyal, and then I'm not, and then I'm loyal again. So we just don't live in that kind of world as Americans, really. So it's always hard for me when I see people just like being loyal to a monarch. Not hard for me, but just like it's just so counter to the way we live our lives.
You're saying to the scene when Killmonger rightfully beats Black Panther for the throne, right? Yeah. He's allowed to do that, and therefore you are annoyed that the Dora Milaje would follow Killmonger
so easily. Right. Like, who's the Guerrero's character? Oh my God, I'm so sad at myself but it was about 4 or 5 years ago at this point.
So your point to this is that as Americans, our sense of loyalty or even patriotism, right? Like, you see people who were not willing to fly the American flag under Trump, but then willing to fly the American flag under Biden.
And then there are people that still believe like that going to Knicks games is going to help. Like, there are people who are like loyal no matter what, no matter how many losses. I'm still going to be out here supporting the Cubs no matter how many times they lose. And then there, when it comes to like our country's leaders, we don't give a fuck. We're going to critique every single one of those, as we should. So it's really hard for me to like put my mind as a member of Wakanda or a member of this army and just be like, okay, so I'm just going to be loyal to you no matter how corrupt you are. Like, I guess.
I think there's a couple things going on here. One thing, the loyalty comes to your ancestors and to place. And so at one point, and I think it's season 6, the end of season 6, where it feels like our heroes are going to be destroyed. And I think, who is it? Morosuke is like, we stand here and die in honor of our ancestors. We're not going to give up or whatever. And so sort of they're not loyal to a clan, but they're more loyal to ancestors and memory. And where...
I see.
Yeah, I don't know.
And in America,
well, also sometimes
our past ain't the cutest.
I feel like loyalty stems in the form of the things that are most consistent. So when I think of patriotism, the first thing I think is military. Like, you're patriotic to the military. Like, you can't become a Democratic or a Republican president without courting the military in some sense, right? Even though the military skews to Republicans or to conservatism, you cannot not support American military. So the size, I guess, I have from here is learning that, Amber, you don't care about the children.
I care about them. I just don't believe the children are our future. I'm just kidding. I just don't like corny shit, and it just got really boring near the end. Like, there's no way to say it. People learn better when they know what they're learning about, and this was a scenario where I'm like, I'm watching a lesson happen, but I don't know what's going on. Or if it weren't for you, I wouldn't know what villains were fighting who. I got too lost, and then I got bored.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, there was some cliche stuff where there's a glamoring spell that I feel like they could have done some cool shit with, but I just wish there was more to it. I mean, come on, this is a story about a Jesuit slave who became a samurai. Let's fuse like this European medieval, 16th century Europe, 16th century Africa, and 16th century Asia. And let's sort of look at the more historical context. And they decided to go in a more traditional anime fighting style, which is fine, but the writing has to be there. Yeah, the show could have been named Sake.
And also, it just felt very so when you decenter Yasuke, it becomes like the Japanese version of the magical Negro. It's like, great, another black person's just here's a prop to help someone else achieve their victory, and maybe they live, maybe they die. It's like, I'm sick of watching The Legend of Bagger Vance in like 15 different ways, or The Queen's Gambit or whatever, even though I really did love The Queen's Gambit. But it did fall into those like tropes of black people coming in to help save someone else, to help save another community that's always bashed them. And then what happens to that black person? Which whatever, but don't name the show after the black person and then the black person is the co-star. I hate that. Yeah, it could have, because Saki was the little girl. She was the one with the powers. She was more powerful than Yasuke. They like simultaneously protected each other, and I feel like we got more of Saki's backstory. We knew Saki's friends. Even it was a cute little moment at the end where her friend was like, just because you like threw me 50 feet in the air, that's not enough to break up our friendship. Cute moment, but damn, the black man ain't got no friends. It's just, we've seen it time and time again. And LeSean Thomas, I'm not gonna lie, like, this was not our favorite. I enjoyed Cannon Busters. And with that being said, Benjamin, why don't you warp up the show?
In conclusion, Yasuke is worth watching. The end of season 1, he is on his own now, so we are going to get more of this Afro-Japanese fusion, and definitely look out for season 2. Season 1 definitely has its ups and downs, but ultimately I think it is worth the watch. It's short. Go ahead, watch it, and tell us what you think.
Thank you so much for listening to another episode of the Sci-Fi Side. If you're loving what we're doing, baby, and you want to support us, please sign up to give $1 or $2 per episode on our Patreon. If you're unable to support financially, you know what to do. Go to Apple Podcasts, leave 5 stars, or, leave whatever stars you want. But leave a written rating if you can. We will read those ratings on the show. Next week, we're going to be reviewing Barry Jenkinson's new adaptation of Colson Whitehead's novel, The Underground Railroad. You can watch The Underground Railroad on Amazon, but that's what we're going to be reviewing for episode 36. We're only watching the first half of the season, so just like we split Yasuke up, we're going to split that up as well. We'll be watching episodes 1 through 5 of The Underground Railroad, so be sure to watch that and check it out, and we will see y'all next time. Bye, y'all.
I thought you were going to be like, and we'll 69 y'all next time.
And we're going to 69, everybody. If you write a rating, you have 69. You can choose Amber or Ben or both.
No, stop that.
Listen, don't hop on this mic unless you want me to
improvise. You a nasty hoe, just like me.
Well, I'm not going to cuddle you anymore because you sitting here telling everybody in the motherfucking world, like,
no, I'm just saying it's hard. It's hard to write when you cuddle me. It's hard to think when you cuddle me. I'm distracted. I'm thinking.
Yeah, well,
I'm thinking.
Just told everybody
my
that
body
I'm
responds.
A bitch wife who smothers you in kisses and cuddles.
I love it, but I just can't write. I said I can't write. I said there's a difference. I love it, but I also can't write.
So I'll stop. So never hug you again.
Please, you know so what to do.
Never kiss you again. Got it. Bet. Got it. Love you.
Thank you for listening to Believe. You can show support to your host by subscribing to the show and giving us a 5-star rating on your preferred platform. Check us out at Believe.com and search for BLEAV on YouTube.
What is up, Astros fans? This is Jeff Balke and my partner, former Astro Jeff Blum from the Believe in Astros podcast to tell you baseball is back, and we've got your world champion Houston Astros covered.
Every week we go inside the clubhouse, break down the games, discuss the players, and give you everything you need to know about the Houston Astros baseball organization with special guests and a few surprises all summer and into the postseason.
So tune in to the Believe in Astros podcast. That's BLEAV on Apple, Spotify, YouTube, and everywhere you get your podcasts. Go Astros.